tuned in to Stocks to Watch, where Global One Media offers exclusive one-on-one discussions with company leaders to help you make informed investment decisions. I'm Ashley Berry, and today we're welcoming Robin Goad, President and CEO of Fortune Minerals Limited. They're listed on the TSX as FT and in the US on the OTCQB as FTMDF. Now, Fortune Minerals is a vertically integrated critical minerals project with a North American supply of cobalt, bismuth, and copper, and more than 1 million ounces of gold as a co-product. Specifically, the company is leading the NICO Project in Canada and a very attractive resource to the US as well. And we'll get more into that. Robin, welcome.
Thanks very much, Ashley. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So I'd like to start by congratulating you on receiving funding from both Canada and the United States, reaching more than 16 million Canadian. Must be a very exciting time for you, and it really shows just how much potential there is with your NICO project. The US and Canada clearly working on supporting their critical minerals supply chains, but tell us, why was the NICO project at the top of the list for them to fund, and what criteria did it really meet?
Well, it really checks a lot of boxes, Ashley. We were early movers. We've been engaged with the U.S. government for about 4 years, and we actually had an application in a long time ago that was turned down. But under the Ukraine war initiative, DPA Title III funding was made available for the projects that really aligned very well with what we plan to do. Feasibility work. So the activities that we needed funding for aligned well with the program, which were also focused on battery materials, decoupling from our dependence on Chinese sources of supply, and also we have vertical integration, which is really important. If you have a project that, for example, produced a concentrate, and then you ship that concentrate over to Asia for processing, you've lost custody and control over the metals that are needed to enable the energy transition, new technologies, and in particular, the transition to e-mobility. So our products are very aligned with the program, having North American process facilities, as well as we also have a process collaboration with Rio Tinto, where we're going to take waste materials from the Kennecott smelter in Utah and hopefully process those at our Alberta refinery to augment our cobalt and bismuth production. So there's a cross-border initiative as well that aligns very well with the program. And I might just point out that this program was actually put in place in 1985. So we are the first Canadian project recipient for a program that was actually put in place 38 years ago.
That's very impressive. And you know what I also find very interesting is that, the federal government, especially in the United States, I should know, nothing really works that quickly. 4 years it took you to really, to have those conversations, to reinforce the importance of what it is that you're doing, and to gain that support again is really quite impressive, I think. I also understand now, we're shifting to the Canadian government, you received more than 7 million from them to support 75% of the costs for additional engineering and test work. I think our viewers would be interested maybe about what those tests are and the studies involved and what they're covered by with this funding.
So we have a very advanced project. We've already spent $137 million to date, and we have a feasibility study. We have the essential permits for the facilities in the Northwest Territories, including an environmental assessment approval and the major mine permits. Our last feasibility study was completed in 2014, and it involved a different refinery site. We have a new refinery site. We have our new government road that comes to close proximity to our proposed mine and concentrator, and a lot of optimizations. So the U.S. government money is focused primarily on the updated feasibility study and securing all the remaining permits for the Alberta refinery site, as well as the remaining authorizations for the facilities in the Northwest Territories. The Canadian government is funding an expansion of test work which they were already funding under a different program. We secured about $750,000 of additional Canadian monies that were announced probably about 3 months ago. And more importantly, we're going to complete the blending tests and assess the requirements for including the Rio Tinto material in that test work. We want to be able to demonstrate or validate that we can process that material, which we're confident we can, and then also determine if we can blend it with our own process streams, and then assess the economic impact of that material. Then the Canadian government's also going to fund something called a front-end engineering and design study, or FEED study. And a FEED study is an incremental increase in the engineering assessment for this project, which takes it to what's called sort of 30 to 40% of detailed engineering. And that provides sufficient engineering to be able to actually procure equipment and give you greater cost certainty.
Fantastic. And I have to imagine, that partnership and that commitment from the Canadian government must really help to reinforce your own ability to make this happen. And now moving back to the US, talking about specifically the federal government, the Department of Defense, they aim to make the NICO project a reliable North American supplier, or at least the money that they've put in, of cobalt sulfate for the rapidly expanding lithium-ion rechargeable battery industry. When we're talking about the DoD, this is something very near and dear to my heart. As you know, I work with military and veterans, so I'm really interested as to what this funding covers in detail.
So again, the programs we've just described, but what's very important to the U.S. government is this decoupling away from unreliable sources of supply. Mm-hmm. So if we take cobalt, for example, 77% of the mine production comes from the not-so-democratic Republic of the Congo. About 80% of all refinery production is controlled by China, and China also controls about 50% of the mine production in the DRC. So you've got political instability in the DRC. You've got policy risks with countries like China being involved or controlling the supply chain, and a lot of price manipulation that's going on right now. We had a lot of important government policies that have been announced by the Biden administration just a few days ago, where Chinese electric vehicles have got 100% tariffs, and 25% tariffs being applied against some of these materials, including the ones that we're going to produce. So one might argue that the Chinese are manipulating the price of raw materials down to make their industry more competitive and make their cars cheaper in the North American market. So our announcement actually came just a few days after after those important policy objectives were announced by the Biden administration.
And I would also mention, potentially national security as well, making made in North America so important. So right now, is the project fully funded, or will there be a need to raise additional funds here in the future?
We have got the lion's share of the money we will require to take the project to what we would call project finance and a construction decision. We do have to raise a little bit more money to secure to complete the option on the purchase of the site that we're going to require for our Alberta refinery. And the only other thing that we would really need financing for is we have to spend an enormous amount of money, more than $16 million in about 18 months. So just having more liquidity in our working capital, because we have to actually pre-fund most of those expenditures, and then we apply to get them reimbursed from the various government programs. Okay. So very important just to have a little bit of additional green in our genes, so to speak.
I love that. And just quickly, Robin, if we could just talk about the next stages and when production will begin.
Sure. So the next stages are completion of these important engineering studies, the test work that's assessing the impact of blending with Rio Tinto material. We're always looking at strategic partnerships. So we are producing materials that are going to be very important, not only for the energy transition and military applications, but also one of the beautiful things with the bismuth production, we own 12% of the global reserves of bismuth. And that is another metal where the supply chain is currently controlled in China. But bismuth is an environmentally safe, non-toxic replacement for lead. So in the United States, for example, all wetted surfaces of potable drinking water sources have been mandated to be lead-free. And we've seen a lot of press coming out of the United States with lead pipes, etc. So bismuth, which is also used in Pepto-Bismol, you can ingest it. It has antibacterial properties, is an environmentally safe, non-toxic alternative. And having a domestic supply of this is going to be very important. But also, in addition to lead replacement, you've got other environmental applications, but the real elephant in the room, so to speak, is manganese bismuth magnets. If you have an electric vehicle, you need a magnet to drive the electric motor, particularly DC motors. And the United States Department of Energy has determined that manganese bismuth magnets are superior to rare earth element magnets, and we own 12% of the global reserves of this metal. So really interesting aspect to that as well. Now, going back to your question, which I went on a bit of a tangent there, but so we'll complete all these engineering and permitting activities over the next 12 to probably 16 months. Then if we have the project financing in place, we'll be able to start construction of the mine site, which will take 2 years. And then the refinery concurrently would be constructed over an 18-month period. And so we're looking at just over 3 years for commissioning or commercial production. Commercial production is actually when you achieve a certain amount of your rated capacity, and you start off by commissioning and then commercial production.
Well, Robin,
So,
I appreciate the tangent you went on, because I think your commitment to environmental sustainability is so important. And many things that you're doing is critical, obviously, for the North American supply. All very positive for Fortune Mineral Limited's shareholders. Do you have anything else to add, potential shareholders? What message would you tell them? Why is now the time to invest in your stock?
Well, I guess we think that the macro for mining is changing right now, which is very important. Clearly, we have a project that is advancing and will advance with this additional financing coming from governments. But we're also seeing a return of basically institutional and retail investors refocused on the mining industry. And if you look at, for example, the major copper producers, a lot of the stocks have gone up by 200, 300%. And typically when you go through these kinds of cycles, the larger companies start with the investment, then they go into the mid-tiers and to the smaller companies. We're going to fit somewhere between smaller and mid-tier, and we're already seeing an impact on our share price. We've invested an enormous amount of money on conducting work. About 137 million has already been invested, and we're seeing significant interest from strategic investors as well. There are probably 7 or 8 battery plants being constructed in Canada today, and a lot more actually in the United States. We've got a big plant by Volkswagen, Stellantis, Honda, Umicore, BASF, POSCO, General Motors, all building plants around this area. And they're going to need compliance with the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act provides those tax incentives to the purchasers of electric vehicles, and you must have a certain percentage of North American sourced raw materials to enable those tax incentives. And we're seeing, for example, we had a Japanese company in the office just a few days ago. They want to invest in North America right now because it doesn't make commercial sense to be mining materials, for example, in Canada or the United States, then shipping them over to Asia for processing. Shipping them back, there's a lot of additional costs. And the politics around the Inflation Reduction Act, I would say, has having a very positive impact. It's doing what it was designed to do, to focus investment back in North America as opposed to overseas.
Politics having a positive impact, Robin? That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I'd
go figure.
love to hear that. Well, listen, Robin Goad, thank you so much. President and CEO of Fortune Minerals Limited, again, listed on the TSX as FT and in the US on the OTCQB as FTMDF. Thank you again for your time, all of these incredible insights, all of this wealth of information. And one thing I will say, Robin, is I love the fact that you talked about getting a little green in your jeans. So good luck to you moving forward. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure meeting you, Ashley.